Well, welcome to the 700 Club. The Democrats may be facing one of the longest, toughest primary battles ever. Former Vice President Joe Biden could be in for a difficult fight against Senator Bernie Sanders.
Other Democrats are also pulling their party far to the left, and that could make it tough for Biden to win the nomination. Jennifer Wishon has the story.
Joe Biden is a frontrunner among Democratic primary candidates, but holding on to his lead may prove to be the greatest fight of his life.
Hey guys, we just need a lane here. We just need a lane here.
Come on, guys.
Okay?
Biden was right at home, leaving a pizza joint in Delaware among a throng of reporters. But liberal voters will have to wait to find out where he stands on a variety of left-wing causes, like Medicare for All, the Green New Deal, and socialism in America.
I gotta go.
Justice Democrats, a progressive group aligned with New York's Democratic Socialist Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, labeled Biden part of the old guard, warning his political ideas could divide the party and suppress liberal enthusiasm. On day one of his campaign, his message sounded a lot like President Trump's slogan, "Make America Great Again."
America's coming back like we used to be, ethical, straight, telling the truth, moving in a way, supporting our allies, all those good things.
The president dubbed Biden Sleepy Joe and quickly warned him in the primary he'll be dealing with people who truly have some very sick and demented ideas.
I've known Joe over the years. He's not the brightest light bulb in the group, I don't think, but he has a name that they know.
Name recognition he has, money he does not. That's a problem, considering the other Democratic leader, Bernie Sanders, is sitting on a war chest of more than $26 million as he works to rally Democrats to support his socialist agenda.
Our job is not just to win the White House, it is to transform the economy and government of this country.
For Biden to beat Bernie and the 18 other Democrats, he'll have to answer for 45 years of votes, public statements, and gaffes. For example, in the 70s, he opposed school busing and racial quotas. In the 90s, he was part of the tough on crime crowd. And as chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, he presided over the Anita Hill hearings. Controversial then, and even more so today, in the era of Me Too. Biden reached out to Hill in advance of his announcement, but Hill told the New York Times she was deeply unsatisfied with what he had to say. Biden hits the campaign trail in earnest Monday. First stop, Pittsburgh.
I think Joe Biden's probably the best Democratic candidate that they have right now. I'm a Republican, but I think that if somebody's going to vote Democrat, it's probably going to be Joe Biden.
I think his time is over for running for president. I don't think he has it. I think we need someone younger, someone with better ideas.
See you guys. Keep the faith.
In Pennsylvania, Biden will play up his reputation as a scrappy politician, popular among working class voters. Workers enjoying record low unemployment under President Trump. Jennifer Wishon, CBN News, Washington.
Well, we now have 20 candidates. Get that, 20 candidates for 2020. I remember back growing up that there actually used to be a gap between elections, and you could actually focus on governing the country. But it just seems like we're into one continuous campaign after another. There's going to be a free-for-all here, and we'll be reporting, and stay tuned. In other news, the key figure in those Easter terrorist attacks in Sri Lanka is dead. John Jessup has that story from our CBN News Bureau in Washington. John?
Thanks, Gordon. Officials in Sri Lanka say Mohammed Zahran, the suspected leader of the group they say carried out those terrorist attacks, was killed. He died in a blast at one of the hotels that was bombed, and police have arrested Zahran's second in command. Sri Lanka's prime minister said militants may be planning more attacks.
Well, they've rounded up a lot of suspects, but there are still some of the active people on the run. They may be having explosives with them, or they may have hidden the explosives. So we have to find the suspects as well as the explosives. So that's still on.
Australia's Prime Minister says the attackers were supported by ISIS. Jews and Christians are calling out Democrat Ilhan Omar of Minnesota for promoting the idea that Jesus was a Palestinian and not a Jew living in Roman-occupied Judea. The Minnesota Congresswoman faced backlash after she retweeted a tweet from Omar Suleiman, an American Muslim scholar and civil rights activist, accusing conservative Christians of being ignorant about Jesus', quote, Palestinian heritage. Michael Dixon, executive director of Stand With Us Israel, tweeted, "No, Ilhan Omar, Jesus was not a Palestinian. He was a Jew born in Israel under Roman occupation. And your need to misrepresent history and misappropriate his background to further a political cause says more about you than it does about anything else." Well, severe weather, including several tornadoes, ripped a path of destruction across the South, killing at least 5 people before moving north. A twister tore the roof off this Ohio barn with its powerful winds. In Louisiana, the small town of Ruston was hit by another tornado, packing 136-mile-an-hour winds. Louisiana Governor John Bell Edwards declared a state of emergency and says search and rescue is a priority, as well as making sure bridges and overpasses are safe and beginning cleanup. Well, the United Nations has called the exodus of Venezuelan refugees unparalleled in the modern history of South America. More than 1 million of the country's 4 million refugees have fled to the neighboring nation of Colombia, where many had an encounter with Jesus Christ over Easter weekend. Charlene Aaron has that story.
A broken economy magnified by a political crisis and power outages is forcing millions of Venezuelans to flee their country. CBN correspondent Chuck Holton has described the desperate situation for those crossing into the border town of Cúcuta, Colombia.
So this is the illegal way to get across from Venezuela into Colombia. It's called La Trocha. These guys are bringing products either into Colombia to sell or back into Venezuela, things that aren't available there, things like tires, things like medicines. Coming across from Venezuela, we're seeing a lot of scrap metal that they sell over in the Colombian side. We see things like copper wire because people are ripping the wires out of the walls and wrapping them up and bringing them over here to sell just to get enough money to eat.
Prostitution by Venezuelan girls is rampant. Lionel Castillo and his wife work with their church to help them.
The wealthiest Venezuelans have already escaped to Spain or Miami. The middle class is going to Ecuador or Chile. But the poorest and most vulnerable are coming to Cúcuta.
Venezuelans have been suffering under one of the worst humanitarian disasters in modern times. But this week, tens of thousands of refugees received the ultimate gift of hope.
Tonight, if you're here and you don't know Jesus Christ as your Savior, tonight you can be sure.
It was called the Festival of Hope, and the Graham team chose the strategic location of Cúcuta to share the gospel to Colombians and Venezuelan refugees as well.
The physical needs, I think, of the people, God sometimes uses that to open up the hearts spiritually.
Christian ministries like Graham's Samaritan's Purse and CBN's Operation Blessing have sent teams to provide food, hygiene kits, and medical care to the refugees. As the humanitarian crisis worsens, the U.S. and other nations are increasing pressure on the Maduro government and his allies, Russia and Cuba. Graham considers the Cuban officials and military personnel who are propping up leader Nicolas Maduro a big obstacle to change.
It's really the Cubans. The Cubans have taken control of the country. And they have taken control of this government. They've taken control of the military. It's almost like Cuba has annexed the country.
As the Venezuela crisis deepens, the U.S. and other nations aren't ruling out military force. Graham says he hopes and prays for a solution that does not involve military force and more suffering for the Venezuelan people. Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
Gordon, that humanitarian aid, a bright spot in the middle of so much desperation.
Well, the desperation is demanding it. Just imagine 1 million people leaving their country just because they can't eat. And we need to be there for them. And we're there. Operation Blessing is there. We're there in your name. But congratulations to Franklin. What a wonderful idea. Let's not just give humanitarian aid. Let's also give them the gospel. Let's give them hope for tomorrow.